There's a fear that we will end up alone.
Oh.
See?
What does it look like to be united in a relationship, and why is unity such an important thing?
We all know what it feels like to experience disunity. What I want people to start tuning into is what it feels like when you're united. There's no such thing as instant perfection when it comes to relationships and marriages.
That's such a cool example. I really love that idea.
Why am I starting to speak in a way that is not as kind as I would like? How many more things can actually be solved if we apply the skills and the virtues of consultation?
A live walkthrough for us of what this consultation could look like.
Are you ready to have a baby?
Hello and welcome back to
That Married Couple Podcast. I'm Nava.
And I'm Kian. And today we have a very special episode.
We do.
We have a guest special for you.
Whoop woo! We are chatting with relationship and marriage coach Susanne M Alexander to talk about what actually helps relationships last.
We're going to be unpacking key ideas from her new book, Growing Our Unity, and breaking down practical tools couples can use to communicate better, make decisions together, and stay connected through challenges.
And as we dive into today's topic, we want you to think of us as your married besties talking love, life, and learning as we figure it all out together.
And before we jump in, this is your reminder to follow us on Spotify, leave a 5-star review also on Spotify,
Yes.
like the video on YouTube, subscribe, and
we have a new thing that we're asking you to do. And
you've got even more homework.
More homework. It is hit that notification button because
notification bell.
The bell. Okay, great. Because we found out some very interesting information, which is that when you hit notify me and you subscribe, when we put out a YouTube video, if our subscribers watch the video as soon as we put it out, YouTube thinks, oh, this is a good video. If you don't, YouTube thinks, not so sure about it.
It's a bad video, yeah.
It's a bad video.
What are we?
But they're not, obviously, as you know. So if you hit the notification bell, and you look at the video straight away, you will help us massively. So please, that is your new homework.
And to incentivize/reward you, what I'm going to do for this episode, the first person to screenshot that they have hit the notification button on YouTube and DM us on Instagram at That Married Couple Podcast will receive a special shout out in our next episode that we record.
Very good.
So get in quick.
Yes. And just a general note, in general, as we always say, this podcast can't exist without you. So send in any questions, your tips and experiences, and let us know what you want to hear on the podcast. You can leave us a comment, you can send us a cheeky DM, or you can click the anonymous question form in our bio.
Lovely. So we have a special guest who's waiting in the wings.
Waiting in the wings?
I can hear, she's just in the waiting room now. So maybe before we jump into it, let's give a brief bio as to who Susanne is.
Yes.
So today, Susanne is joining us, and she is a relationship and marriage educator. She's a coach, an author, and the founder of Marriage Transformation. What can't she do, Nava?
What can't you do? Nothing. She can do everything. She works with couples around the world, is certified in evidence-based tools, and has written or co-written, wait for it, over 30 books.
That's almost as high as I can count, Nava.
That's almost as high as Kian can count. And some of these books include Marriage Can Be Forever, Preparation Counts, which I'm sure many people have heard of.
Susanne brings both professional expertise and lived experience, and today we're going to be unpacking her latest book, Growing Our Unity.
Yes, a little bit about her background. She's originally from Canada and now lives with her husband, Phil, in the US, and they love taking romantic boat rides together.
Who doesn't love a romantic boat ride?
Who doesn't love one? How
All right.
sweet.
Well, I'm hearing she is here in the room, so I think we might go to her now.
Susanne, welcome. Thank you for being on our podcast.
It's a delight to be with both of you, indeed.
Thank you so much. So we've shared a little bit about who you are and what you have done, but we would love to hear from you in your own words. Can you describe what it is that you do?
What a good question. Some days it feels like I'm doing everything, and some days it feels like I'm able to focus on just one thing. So let me touch on a few things. I am a relationship and marriage coach. So that means I'm meeting with couples, I'm meeting with individuals, helping them to get themselves ready for relationships and marriages. or strengthen their marriage if they're already in one. And I'm offering online courses and doing speaking engagements and doing podcasts. Generally, what I'm doing is actually promoting relationship and marriage education because there's no such thing as instant perfection when it comes to relationships and marriages. We all need to learn the knowledge and the skills that are wise in order to be successful.
Amazing.
Lovely.
Oh, and I'm writing books.
You are writing
Yes,
books.
lots of books, Susanne.
One could even say that's why we're here today, to discuss one of your latest books.
One could say that.
So, Susanne, what was it that made you want to get into this space around relationships, relationship help, and relationship coaching?
A lot of it had to do with personal history. I went into marriage at age 19, ended up with someone who had a lot of mental illnesses, and the marriage was very difficult. We had a child, and we managed to actually keep the marriage together till she was about 18 and then divorced. I then met someone new, and we got married. Within a few months of our marrying each other, we had friends whose marriages lasted 3 months, 9 months, 4 years, and both of us had come out of divorce. And we started asking ourselves what was wrong. Why? Why was this happening? And what could we do to make a difference? So together we formed the company that I'm now sole proprietor of, which is Marriage Transformation. Then 8 years into that marriage, he developed brain cancer. And 2 years later, he passed away. So I then was wondering, what do I do with the company? What do I do with my life? How do I go on without him? After a period of time, it became clear I should stay in this line of work. It became clear that it was maybe possible to marry again. And so I am now 12 years into a third marriage. Between all of these things, I have ended up with stepchildren, with grandchildren, with all kinds of different experiences. And those have all been learning and action experiences that I'm then able to draw on to accompany other people.
Amazing.
Lovely.
It's so nice. I'm sure that basically you can relate with everyone. I'm sure any client that you work with, there's some level of connection that you would have with them.
Even like this idea of, I didn't realize that you got married so young, Susanne, as well. Like that, you beat us. I'm like, I got married at 20 and like by a few months, and I'm always the youngest person that I know, but it's nice there's someone else that's beaten me to the early marriage.
Yes. And before we go into talking a bit more about your book, we thought we might just share how we know you and what this connection is as well. Because I had heard of your books before we actually met. My mum is a big fan of Marriage Can Be Forever, Preparation Counts. So we had spoken about that before. And then what was the next thing? Kiana and I participated in the Foundations for Healthy Relationships course 5 years ago.
Yeah, back when we were getting to know each other, it was something that we did and really helped our relationship.
And then we were at the Baha'i Temple in Sydney, and a friend of ours who was, I think, very young, like 12, 11 at the time, saw your book Relationship Talk and said, "Hey, Nava and Kian, you should buy this book." And we were like, okay. So we bought this book, and we've mentioned this to you before. We actually took it around Europe in my bag in our whole holiday, and it was our little...
It's this little kind of, it's almost like a little bit bigger than like a matchbox.
Oh, here's one I prepared earlier.
There we go, look at that. And so it fit in like our little day bag when we're going around Europe. So every time that we were like in front of the Eiffel Tower on the, was Champ de Mars, I think is the place, we'd bring it out and read it together. So it was a really great companion over that period.
So that was another introduction we had to you, and then we now help facilitate the Foundations course in Australia, which we are very happy to be involved with and very grateful to be involved with. So that's how I guess we got to know you even better on a more personal level. But yeah, we're very excited to have you on the podcast finally, and for everyone else to meet you if they don't already know you, or to see this chat for number one fans like my mom.
It seems like destiny. We just kept intersecting.
Yeah.
So shall we talk a little bit about the book Growing Our Unity? Because that's one of the things that we're going to be mainly speaking about today, and the key concepts described in the book.
This one. Another one. Here's
Another
one I prepared earlier.
You have a whole list. Is there anything else you want to call? Do you have the Lord of the Rings or something with you that you can pull out?
Well, Nava mentioned marriage could be forever, preparation counts, so I could flash it too.
Oh,
Wow.
very good.
Lovely. So with Growing Our Unity, can you give us maybe a little bit of a brief introduction into what it is and maybe how it's different to other relationship books that exist?
We emphasized, I have a co-author, Grant Pierce, we emphasized virtues all the way through, which he had developed an assessment called the Character Foundations Assessment. And we decided that not only was virtues and character important for couples to tune into before marriage, but also important for them to apply those virtues after marriage. So we have put virtues like respect and flexibility and so on all the way through the book. We've also drawn on science. So we have quoted experts and researchers all the way through so that people know there is this wealth of resource people and resource books and so on to help them be successful in marriage.
Lovely.
So obviously the title of the book is called Growing Our Unity. So this concept of unity is a very important one. And in the book, you kind of lay out a clear framework for building thriving relationships that's grounded in 3 core foundations. So we've got commitment to unity, reflection and consultation, and then virtues growth. So we're going to talk about those 3 aspects as we go through our conversation today. But starting with unity, Kian and I grew up as Baha'is. So for us, this concept of unity is not something that's very foreign. But thinking about what unity looks like in relationships, I think is something that as a society, we don't really talk about that much. So it would be useful to get your perspective in light of the book and all of your work. What does it look like to be united in a relationship, and why is unity such an important thing?
I have made it a mission for the word unity to start to become part of everyone's vocabulary, particularly couples. I think we all know what it feels like to experience disunity, right? You get that terrible feeling in your stomach, you know, when you're out of harmony with your partner. What I want people to start tuning into is what it feels like when you're united. So when there's harmony going between the two of you. I'm going to read you the definition of unity that's in the book, but then let's talk a little bit about the practicalities, both in your relationship and in what I'm observing too. So unity is building harmony and consensus through effective communication and consultation. We collaborate to develop common vision, purpose, and goals with individuals, groups, and communities. We align our personal goals and activities with those of each other, and those of our families and our groups around us. We embrace the diversity of people and welcome them into a full range of activities. And we strive to create a sense of belonging and oneness between people. That's a general overview of what unity is. But when we think about unity between a married couple, and I want the two of you to be picturing what does it look like in your home, what happens with communication? What does unity look like when dinner needs to be fixed, the dishes need to be done? What does unity look like when you're talking about your goals for next year? What does unity look like when you are dealing with something that's difficult and you might have different perspectives? So I wonder if the two of you have any examples of what does it look like? What does it feel like when you're in unity together?
That's a great question. And I like being put on the spot like this. It makes them like, okay. I feel like straight away, my brain went to like unity of thought when you were giving those different examples about like anything, whether it's like, to your point, like doing the dishes or whether it's planning. And I guess to not use unity in the description, maybe let's say togetherness of thought. That I feel like so often in our relationship, it's that idea and that understanding of like there's something that needs to be done. And we speak about this idea of like this yes and attitude that comes into the way that we do things. So maybe is it like a little bit like that idea of if something needs to be done, there's not like necessarily this feeling of opposition, but it's seeking to understand. And then with that, seeing how you can support and make that the best possible thing. And like to this idea of like, say, doing the dishes and stuff, I feel like there's this also like this unity of like reading where each other are at and figuring out like the things that need to be done, and therefore it being what we can do as like a team to get as much like and to get everything done that needs to be done. Yeah. That's kind of what it starts with me, but I want to see, I feel like you have some thoughts that you're
Well,
pondering.
I mean, I think it's very interesting. Even us, we don't necessarily always use the vocabulary of unity when we're describing our relationship. So I think it's something that is definitely very useful to implement. For us, I think one thing as well, adding on what Kian said, is this idea of a shared and united purpose behind why we do things, so that if there is opposition of thought, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because in the discussion of that, we're still striving towards the same goal. So we can find a common ground and a common understanding and a common truth that helps us reach that common purpose. And I think we talked about very briefly, I just mentioned the consultation and reflection that you speak about in the book and virtues. And I think they're so interlinked, and that's the way your book raises all of these as well.
Well, and I think with unity, one key way that we apply it is if there is something we are asked to do or there's some major change in life, a key question is, how will this affect our unity? If we say yes to this, if we do this, will it bring disunity into our family? Will it cause some sort of problem? One client I had was discussing should one of the partners take a new job that would involve them driving much further than they were currently. And as they then consulted about the implications of doing that, they ended up deciding that they should actually move to the new location instead of the commute, because with the commute, they were going to be apart too much and difficult with the children and so on. So in order to protect their unity and in order to have more time together, they made a major decision to move.
That's so nice, because when you were saying that, I was thinking, oh, so did the partner who had the job not take the job then? But it's not about not taking opportunities necessarily, but finding creative ways to then maintain that unity. So that's such a nice example.
Let me say one other thing. I think that as you begin to have children, as your family starts to expand, unity becomes even more important. You have grandparents that want to get involved. You have different choices to do with your own time. You have things that might interfere with the time that you were used to spending together. And so unity then comes up as, how do we maintain the strength of the unity of our marriage? How do we expand unity so that as an extended family in support of the children, what does that look like? Are there any relationships that we need to rebuild or strengthen? And unity then becomes really a key element to raise when you start to feel a little disconnected. So sometimes you get focused and you get so exhausted when you have a new child. And the concept of unity then comes up as something to really pay attention to. Maybe you need to get a babysitter and go out and do a date together. It's also a key piece of research that when couples demonstrate unity in front of a cranky child, the child calms down. So one of the fun things about having a child is that you get to kiss and hug and have group hugs, and it lowers the stress level between the two of you, increases unity for you. It helps to establish you as a new unit, a new united unit, the three of you, and you are demonstrating unity and unity of your thoughts and your feelings on a regular basis.
I think with that, I'm interested as well in the sense of what it looks like, say if there is a couple that is operating with this unity or positioning themselves to have this unity, what are some other practical, I guess, expressions that you might be able to see of what that might look like in a relationship? If you have a couple that have this unified front or this unified aspect, what might that look like practically in a relationship?
Well, I'm going to come up with a couple of ideas, and then the two of you can come up with some more. One is, I think, a daily check-in. How are you doing? What was important in the day today? Is there anything that you need to share? Anything that you need to process? Is a way to rebuild unity when you've gotten a bit out of tune or, not familiar anymore with your partner's inner world. I'm also a fan of greeting each other when one of you is coming back home or when you are parting, to make sure that there is some level of affection, that there's a kiss, that there's a hug, that there's I'm saying a prayer for you, that you have a safe drive, or whatever that interaction is, but that there is a point of unity, of connection at that moment when you are coming and going. So what about the two of you? Any examples?
I'll let you go, and then I'll come in with mine.
I mean, I think both of those we are very strong on in our relationship, and they're like rules that we don't break. We always have daily check-ins and debriefs, and we always make sure that when one of us comes home, our rule is the other one like runs to the door and gives them a hug. Or before leaving, we always have to say, I love you, even if we're not so happy with each other at that moment, things like that. But something you briefly mentioned earlier that I'm sure people who listen to the podcast will be screaming out at us is our weekly date nights. It's something that we do no matter what. And lately they've been a little bit more simple. We really like it when we can make them fun, fresh activities. But I think that's also one ritual that we really stick with that I think does help with that unity.
I was interested. There was something you called out there, Susanne, about this idea of these. I think it was the first point you made about these like coming together and having these kind of connections. And I think you spoke on this idea of, particularly when you're not maybe feeling that unity, coming and being able to sort of say like, oh, maybe I feel a little bit disconnected. I think it's a really interesting point, having to the kind of point of this discussion as well, that vocabulary to be able to come and say, I feel disconnected, I feel disunited, rather than, I can imagine, maybe like resentment or something that can build and cause a larger argument when somebody feels maybe disconnected, or a lack of, maybe to the point we're saying, unity with their spouse, that then is shown by them maybe being frustrated or complaining about something or saying, you never do this. But being able to your point, have these connections or these abilities to come together and go, oh, look, right now I'm actually feeling like we're maybe not super united in this, or I'm not feeling super close with you. What's something we could do? I can imagine is very helpful for couples.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I said to my husband earlier today that I was starting to notice just an edge of criticism, or like a critical edge to things that I was commenting on to him, and started to recognize that if that pattern continued, we were going to end up with disunity, because I know that would hurt his heart if I am really strongly critical with him. And I was starting to hear that edge. And it's an indication for me of a well-being check. Why are these things coming up for me? Why am I starting to speak in a way that is not as kind as I would like? And to recognize that we have had weeks of me looking after him because he's gone through a medical procedure, and I have allowed myself to get just a little bit too tired. And so recognizing that now that he's coming out of that, I have an opportunity to rebuild my energy and to start to pay attention to if I've got a negative tone in my voice, and to turn that around so that unity then rebuilds between us.
Before we move on to talk a little bit more about the virtues in depth, I wanted to talk about this idea of unity. You mentioned in your book that unity isn't sameness or loss of individuality. I think that's something that I'd love to explore, because I feel that in our society at the moment, there's this push to hyper-individualism. I don't need my partner. It's great if we like each other and fine, but I want to be myself and he can be himself, and I don't want to just be reliant on him. And this idea of my understanding of codependency, when we researched it, we were like, oh, there's a bit more to it. But just taking it at a very basic level, not being able to do things separately, or always having this, I guess, anxious attachment to be together and do everything together, that is one extreme. And then I guess the complete individualism is another extreme. How does unity fit into that? Because you're not saying that unity is not having your own individualism as well, right?
Can you imagine how boring it would be in your household if you were both exactly the same?
Yep.
Well, it'd be really interesting if we were both the same as me, because I'm a fascinating
I was going to
person.
say it would be more interesting if we were both like me, because I'm funny.
Yeah. I'm feeling disunified right now, Nava. I'm feeling like there's a break in our unity. Maybe.
That's okay. Here we go.
Wow, what a great.
Nice. Sorry, Suzanne, please continue.
I think marriage is an opportunity to get to know another person very well and to build connection with each other. If I'm stuck on being an individual and totally standing on my own, and my husband's in that same mode, then we don't feel like teammates. We don't feel like we're partners. We don't feel like we're actually together in this marriage. And so the diversity of being able to talk about what's important to him and his career, to be able to talk about mine, to be able to have differences of opinion about things and work through the process of finding points of unity is a key element of marriage. I wonder actually whether some of this individualism has been born out of the divorce culture that we have been struggling with for a number of decades now, although I think it's turning around back towards marriage, because there's a fear that we will end up alone and not know how to manage being alone. What I think we need to be addressing or focusing on instead is, how do we stay together and how do we as partners do this well? If we stay focused on that fear of ending up alone, which can have us rigidly behave as if we are alone, then we're not really in a marriage together. We're not co-creating this relationship together. What are your additional thoughts on this topic?
I mean, I think, especially because we got married relatively young, people often will ask us, do you feel like you've lost your individuality or you've lost yourself in your relationship? But I think people who actually know us deeply would not find that that's the case at all. And even career-wise, we reflected on this in, I don't know if this episode will have come out yet, but in our Q&A episode, we reflected on this about whether we think our careers have been negatively impacted by the fact that we're married and we can't spend as long on things. And what we've consistently found is that even though obviously marriage takes time and effort and all of those things, that love and that support has helped us thrive in our individual areas rather than taking away from it. Yeah, do you have any thoughts?
I completely agree with that. to that idea of, and we speak about it a lot, having somebody who, when you're married, is always in your corner and you can always have as somebody to bounce ideas off, to think and to plan. it's a real superpower that I think you can sort of utilize. Obviously, we're lucky to get married young as well, but through so many stages of our life and for so many key decisions that we've been able to do it with somebody who's had just our best interests at heart, I think is a really strong aspect of our relationship and a real benefit, I guess, that you get from it.
Yeah.
Well, and this actually speaks to one of our unity practices, and that's celebrations. No matter what it is that's positive one of us accomplishes or does, even if it's something very simple, we connect with each other and share it and celebrate together. Sometimes we might go out to dinner or do something bigger, but often it's a quick hug or a high five or something like that. But taking the time to celebrate each other's accomplishments or what's brought happiness to the other person is a key place, that is a key practice for us that builds unity.
That's really lovely.
So I think that wraps up for now our conversation on this unity aspect. I think the next bit that we wanted to go into is this idea of virtues growth. And so in the book, you mentioned virtues growth as being this core driver of lasting relationships. And you speak about this idea of trying to promote virtues and noting that they are starting to be researched more, but many couples maybe aren't fully familiar with them yet, or it isn't part of their vocabulary. Could you maybe give us a little bit of an overview as to what virtues growth is and the importance that sits behind it?
You might be more familiar with the term character, for example, and virtues are key elements of the character that each of us has. When you think about trying to carry out a marriage, trying to carry out any relationship, but definitely carrying out a marriage, how do you do that without respect? How do you do that without flexibility? How do you do that without the attention to truthfulness? How do you do that without being honest with each other, to being dependable? All of these virtues are foundational for a healthy relationship. And as we interact with each other, we have opportunities to practice those virtues. We also have opportunities to determine that we need to strengthen a particular quality. Flexibility is one that I used to struggle with a lot. Any kind of change, I would go into this rigid resistance. And so marriage has given me the opportunity through lots of changes to be much more skillful with the virtue of flexibility. And I think for any couple that has a connection of the soul between them, that accompaniment of the growth of each other's soul, of the virtues of each other's soul, is part of what sets you up for, I would say, a successful eternity. If you are going to be partners not only in this world, but also as whatever happens after this happens, then the part of the development that happens within marriage is vital. It gives you the opportunity to be at the end of your life very skillful with all of these qualities, like being of service to each other and so on. And what's your favorite virtue?
Oh, our favorite virtue. I don't know if this is our favorite one, but I have a story / thing to share about virtues and one of them. So I think in this discussion about virtues, it's come to light that it's so important to have that vocabulary and really understand what each of these virtues means and be able to implement them in your conversations. We found for us, I mean, as I said before, we have grown up learning about these virtues. So out of anyone, technically, we should be very comfortable and very familiar with them. But one of these things that has been a bit of a constant thing in our relationship is that I have grown up and always been perpetually early to things, and Kian has been perpetually late to things. And so...
Sorry, Miss Luxford, if you're watching. I had a teacher in school that gave me detentions, Friday detentions, which were like the second worst detention you could get because I was always late. And she stopped giving them to me after about a year. She said, Kian, I've been giving you detentions for a year. Nothing's changed. I give up. Like, just so it's something that's one of our ongoing things that we work on.
But yeah, we had been having this back and forth, and throughout our relationship and our marriage, I became a little bit more flexible and he became a little bit more
Punctual.
Dependable.
Yes, a little bit more dependable. But we still had this little back and forth that it didn't feel like we were quite aligned on this. It felt like Kian would be sometimes try and be earlier just to appease me, and I would accept him being later to appease him. And it was kind of like we hadn't reached a point of unity on it. Until very recently, I was reflecting on it because there was one instance where Kian was running late and I was sitting there waiting. And then I realized, the reason that this is affecting me is because I feel like I'm not being respected. When we're coming to an agreement about when we would leave and then we would leave later, I felt like it was a lack of respect. And then when we were able to have that conversation in a very calm, loving way, but with the language of respect rather than you're so annoying or whatever it might be, I feel like that was what struck a chord and we were able to come to a mutual understanding and agreement.
Yeah, well, that's what resonated for me, because I think in the conversations I maybe hadn't fully understood the impact of it until you were able to isolate, like, I guess the virtue that sits within that and the actual feeling. Was I able to go, that's the actual thing that sits at the core here? Because I wasn't able to, from my perspective, see that was the thing that was being hurt or being damaged through that. So it definitely helped us in that situation.
Yeah. And it took us 5 years to get to that point where I was like, it's about respect. So if these virtues were even more at the top of our minds, it may have come earlier and we may have been able to, it wasn't a major issue at all, but, come to that point of agreement sooner. So I think definitely respect is one that's certainly important.
Well, and you used the term, this language of virtues. And one of the things that we encourage in growing our unity is to use virtues as acknowledgments and affirmations to each other. So, if I were to thank the two of you for being patient as we worked through the process of preparing for this podcast, I would be acknowledging patience in you. And with the two of you, if you followed that consultation with an incident where Kian showed up on time, then Nava would say, thank you for being respectful, right? Thank you for practicing respect in this moment. Or I feel that respect was present, or whatever, however it is that you word it, but to acknowledge that a virtue was present and carried out.
It's really interesting. I, a few years ago, would have had an aversion to doing something like an affirmation like this. I would have been like, it feels forced and it feels not genuine. But having then not implemented this yet, it's something that I definitely think we will do. But these kind of things where we are now open to using the language of, language of healthy relationships and using tools, even if it feels a little forced to begin with, when you start implementing it, it actually makes such a massive difference.
Well, even we did a relationship reset, like podcast episode. I think it's going to be the previous one that came out before this. And in that, we were making plans for ourselves and our relationship going into next year. And one of the reflections we had as well was this idea of finding the virtues that we could look to work on and practice rather than individual activities of, like, for example, in this, like, I'm going to be more on time next year. It was, say, I'm going to practice this virtue of respect and ensure that I'm respecting your time more. And I think for us in our conversation, it gave us a much easier way to understand what it was that had to happen, but also provided an avenue for us to continue to improve on something and not have something as simple as success or failure, but this ongoing growth that I think is really special about virtues for couples, that it's not a situation where you either have failed in something or you've completed it. We can obviously always get better at it. So even in our relationship, that's something that we've started to see as well.
Yeah, so we'll definitely continue to and implement these things like those affirmations more and more in our relationship for sure.
Well, and one powerful thing that I encourage couples to do is when an activity is coming up, so it might be your weekly date night, anytime an activity is coming up that you're going to both be involved in, to have a consultation and agree on what are the virtues that you want to show up in that activity? What are the virtues that you're both going to practice in that activity? What are the virtues that would have it be a particular way? So, for instance, you could choose the virtue of positive spirit or joyfulness. That in our activity, let's do whatever we can to make sure that that virtue is what shows up. And if you're going into a difficult situation, what is it? What virtues will help you be successful in that situation? And it's a very powerful place to stand. It gives you a lot of strength. It gives you a lot of empowerment in the circumstance and the ability to carry it out in a very positive way.
Yeah.
So in the book, Susanne, you mentioned 22 different key virtues that exist for couples to be able to express in their relationships. Are there any that stand out to you, particularly for maybe couples early in their relationships, that are really fundamental, that you see as maybe, I don't want to say more important, but maybe let's say more impactful than others for couples starting out?
Well, I think truthfulness is a really foundational one to start with. And hopefully it's been practiced before you get into marriage so that it's already something you're clear that you're both good at. If truthfulness is present on a consistent basis, delivered with kindness, with tact, with care and compassion, then trust shows up, right? You then start to understand that your partner is trustworthy. So if you have those two things there, so that you're clear your partner is dependable and that what comes out of their mouth is something that is believable and true, at least for them in that moment, then you have a very strong foundation to begin with.
So I think that gives us a nice overview, I guess, of these different virtues that exist within relationships and all the benefits that come from them. I'm now keen, maybe as we start to shift into this idea of consultation and maybe how that all works together.
Yeah, so in your book, you talk about reflection and consultation as being essential ongoing practices that help couples understand themselves and each other, regulate their emotions, make decisions in unity rather than conflict. And we have spoken about consultation a little bit on the podcast before. In the last few episodes, we've been very keen on this idea of consultation.
It was I'm thinking it was be intentional was something we said all the time in season 1. Be intentional. It was then be chalant was something that we started speaking about. And then now it's consultation. Those are our kind of key themes that we keep on moving through. So right now it's consultation.
But we've never fully explained what consultation looks like practically. We just say consultation will help fix this or that. So I'd love to hear from you, Susanne. For someone who is new to this idea of consultation, what does it mean and what does it look like practically in a relationship?
It's important in consultation that you both share your thoughts and you both share your feelings, and you do it in a way that the other person can continue to listen. What I encourage couples often to do is to get a beautiful bowl and set it between the two of them. One of the key elements of consultation is letting go a bit of your ego, letting go of the insistence on being right about something, whatever the topic is that you're talking about, and turn to inspiration. So the bowl represents a place where you each contribute your thoughts, your feelings, you throw in the facts about the situation, whatever it is that influences and affects it. And then through prayer or turning to inspiration to stir it up in the bowl, what emerges then is something that neither of you ever would have dreamt of in the first place. What interrupts consultation is if one of you shows up to talk about it and you've already decided what the outcome should be. It completely blocks the virtue of creativity. And creativity is part of what helps that mix happen so that new things emerge. And what is emerging, first of all, is greater understanding. So part of the purpose of consultation is that you then understand each other better and you understand the issue better. In it may or may not go on into some sort of decision. But often consultation has an end point where you decide on a particular action that you want to carry out together. What I find with couples is that it's quite different than if you're on a committee or some sort of team where you can actually take a vote and a majority might rule. But with a couple, you're challenged with coming to consensus. There's only two of you. You have to come to some level of agreement together. And it's the mix of all of those elements in the bowl that allows you to come to a good conclusion. What I find in marriage that is, it's less formal than a committee meeting. Often it's over a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. It's sitting at the table. It's while we're eating. It's under all kinds of circumstances. It might be while we're driving. Elements will come up where we know we need to talk about something and we'll start to take a look at it. But then we feel free to let it rest. If it's not immediately clear what it is that we're supposed to do, or we're not quite yet understanding each other, then we might go away for a couple of days, and then one of us will raise it back up again. Are we ready to continue? It's a much more flow process for us, rather than an agenda and a chairperson and all of those kinds of things. It's an activity that has us really learn what's on each other's heart, what's on each other's mind, and bring us closer together in unity.
That's lovely. I think as well with that, bringing that into a relationship, I guess I'm interested, what are some practical, I guess, methods that a couple could employ to bring this spirit of consultation into what they're doing?
I encourage couples to be very conscious with their language and invite their partner into consultation. So it's not a random discussion or something that you treat very casually, but to very consciously say to each other, let's consult about this. And that has you in a different mindset. It has you look to how to spiritually connect with each other. It has you really thinking about how important this is and take the process seriously with each other.
I can see that being so useful for like any couple who's dealing with anything, obviously, instead of maybe coming at it from a spirit of like, I have this thing I need to debate, or we have to like, to that idea, like we have something I need to solve, or like we have to argue about something. Obviously, I'm not expecting, I would hope most couples don't sit down and go, I need to argue with you about something. But to have that dialogue where you know that there's a decision to be made and you can say, look, let's just consult on this. And if you're both aware of that, how much strength that would give you in your relationship to be able to both turn towards each other in those instances.
It also makes me think of when we consult, something that we always talk about is this idea of finding the spark of truth or coming to this consensus that you spoke about, rather than agreeing to disagree or just being like, I don't agree with you, you do your thing, I'll do my thing, forget about it. Because I guess that contradicts the idea of unity. But it also reminded me of this, I guess, statistics that the Gottmans shared. And I know you've done Gottman training and we love their work as well. But something that they've shared and that we've even told people about is that 69% of relationship issues are non-solvable. That's their claim. And when we actually thought about it, I think it was you. Yeah, you commented something on our video that we shared about that you said, what about consultation or something like that? And that that encouraged us to reflect on it. And we said, actually, yeah, we don't do that. We don't live by that motto necessarily in our marriage. But I wonder, in relation to consultation, what are your thoughts on this view that relationship problems can be non-solvable and you just have to deal with it?
I think it's always important for us to respect science. It gives us a lot. And we need to recognize that it's evolving. So when the Gottmans reached that conclusion, it was supported by the facts. It was supported by their observations of couples. It was not couples, however, who were practicing the skills of consultation and the virtues of consultation. And so it's an invitation then for the science to evolve in looking at how many more things can actually be solved if we apply the skills and the virtues of consultation. So I think it's evolving. I think it will change over time. And your experience is my experience, where there are very few things actually that are that end up being unsolvable.
So do you think then there is still a place potentially for people to just accept things as they are and not be on the same wavelength? Or does everything need to have reached a mutual consensus?
My experience has been the consultation goes on much longer if we're on a different wavelength or different page. And sometimes we need to step back and look at how we're going about dealing with the issue. Sometimes it means that we need to invite somebody else into the consultation. It could be, for instance, if we're discussing finances, that we had bypassed involving our financial planner. And if we had our financial planner in on the consultation, the solution would emerge. Sometimes you might see that one of you is stuck on practicing a particular virtue, and you need to understand what the dynamics are that are happening. We were in one situation where we were trying to resolve an issue involving tenants of a place that we were renting. And my husband was seeing his loyalty to these friends who were renting the place as being the most important thing. And we kept going back and forth with, well, but if we sold the house, then the money could be used for this. And we kept going round and round. And finally realized that we needed to draw on that loyalty and invite the friends in to consult with us. And as soon as we got all four of us together and took a look at the whole situation, we came up with an entirely different outcome than we were starting to be stuck on to begin with. So,
such a special example. That's so powerful, that idea, and that, I guess also with that, to the point that you also said, Susanne, I think the humility, going to virtues as well, the humility that sits behind consultation and the ability to see that there are other perspectives that are going to help reach the best possible solution. That's such a cool example. I really love that idea. Okay, so we've been speaking about consultation, but something that Susanne, you mentioned to us that I'm keen for us to go into is a bit of a sort of a live walkthrough for us of what this consultation could look like.
And some of this you're going to have to finish on your own, but I'll get you started. And that is, are you ready to have a baby?
Are we ready to have a baby? Oh my goodness.
No.
This is a really key topic when you've been married for a while and you might start to think about it. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily ready, but it's good to be starting to have the consultation about, are you ready? So one of the first things that I ask couples to do is think about, what are the principles, what are the values, what are the virtues that relate to this topic. So for example, you might ask, are we responsible and mature enough, right? What other things might be there for you?
My brain went straight to responsibility, which is interesting. The first thing I thought of was responsibility. Do you want to tag team as we go through?
Yeah. Well, for me, I thought a little bit broader into the idea that for us, one of the reasons to get married is to have kids that can serve humanity and that we can raise in that way. So for us, I think both of us in this, I'm assuming, is that, no, we've actually had this conversation a little bit before, but is that a key purpose for marriage is to have children. So that is an underlying thing, that at some point in our marriage, our goal is to be able to have children. When is another question, but yeah, I think that's one thing that definitely will influence this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a foundation principle for the two of you. And so you wouldn't decide to not have children.
Yeah.
Think of what I think, like in terms of principles and values. So we have the actual, obviously, like the goal of marriage and what we understand the purpose of our marriage to be. We have then this idea of responsibility. I guess sacrifice is something that I guess comes into it in terms of, I guess, the value that applies to this idea of sacrifice and what that potentially means. I guess that's maybe what we'll discuss later. Is there anything else, or do you think that kind of gives us a starting point?
Those are the things that come to mind for me, but I wonder, Susanne, is there anything else that would be useful for us to have in our minds?
The two of you did a podcast segment on equality. And I think that's a principle that would guide you through figuring out what roles each of you would play and what that would look like for you as your family grew and changed. So I would put that one in as part of the mix.
It's a really good one.
What about concerns? What might be some concerns as you think about it? Are we ready to have a baby?
I think there's a few that we would have. I guess there's a question of like time and like career, for example, and the kind of the implications that having a child has in terms of your focus and your attention being drawn onto something else. And obviously that meaning, to the point we said before, of sacrifice, other things maybe falling back. I guess that's one.
That's probably my biggest concern. And also the freedom of right now we're able to travel, like we're going away on Sunday and we're able to do things very easily and quickly. We don't have anything really tying us down. We don't even have a pet, for example.
Ties into this idea of responsibility, I guess.
Yeah, responsibility. The only people we're really responsible for are ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think those would be the key concerns, I guess.
And it's common for couples to think about finances, and it's also common to think about space. Depending on where you're living, do you need to be living in a different
Actually, we have a tiny one-bedroom apartment, so that is a good point.
And finances was the thing that I was going to say, but I wasn't sure if it was equivalent now. But that's good. That was the other thing that I was calling out, is obviously the costs involved.
And so next, I would have you go through your feelings, any facts related to the process. Are there any particular personality traits that would affect this decision? You know, are there any particular factors in your life that would affect the decision? And you would continue to go through that process of examining things. It's also important to note that this is not a linear process. So we could have been talking about the principles and you raised a fact. Then I would make a note of the fact so that you are going in a flowing pattern through these different aspects. It's not necessarily a linear process as you go through. I mean, I have a worksheet. It takes you through the linear process, but I encourage people to be flexible and note what it might be coming up that you need to note in a different area.
Do you, in a session with a couple, would you go through these questions with them similarly to what we just started to do there and see that process unfold?
Yeah, I have them decide ahead of time what particular topic they want to consult about that they're struggling to consult about. Let me know ahead of time so I can be thinking about it. And then we get together, the three of us, and start to explore all of these different things. And it's amazing what comes up. And definitely they get unstuck and are able to listen to each other in a new way and see some different perspectives that help them then reach a good conclusion or a good place of understanding.
And speaking of conclusion, I guess that maybe brings us to the conclusion of this part. But there are still, you're not off the hook yet. There are still a few final little questions we have for you, Susanne. So I guess to wrap us up, one of the questions we had was, if a listener could implement one daily habit from your book, what should it be? What would be one daily habit that you think people could implement?
Look for something to laugh about every day.
You're so lucky.
I think it is. It is right. It's so important to remember to lighten up. Life can get so serious, right? Our world can be so serious, but that ability to laugh together connects you.
Beautiful.
Lovely.
And then I just want to briefly say before we get to our final question, what a joy it has been to have you on and to talk about this. I know reading your stuff and working with you with the Foundations for Healthy Relationships course, there's so much knowledge and wisdom that you have that we could have gone into. We just have a limited time, but would love to continue this conversation in the future as well. And yeah, so excited for people to audiobook, to read your book, and to implement all of these things in their relationships and in our relationship as well. So just a very brief thank you before the official thank you that I will give you in a minute. But we have one question that we ask all guests that come on the podcast. So this is a general question.
What is your favorite color?
That is not the question, but I'm now curious. What is your favorite color, Susanne?
The tough
I
questions.
go back and forth between this one and green, which matches my eyes.
Oh, they're both wicked colors. Wow.
Very topical, given this is coming out 3 months after Wicked came out.
Not. But anyway, lovely colors. And this color looks great on you, Susanne. But our actual question that we ask all of our guests is, if you could give one piece of relationship advice to our listeners, what would it be?
I have a prop for this one.
Ooh, okay.
You guys are so fun. I thought I have to have a prop on this.
Oh,
see?
I
Yes.
do. It's very cool.
It's to look at each other as two wings of a bird, to make sure that you are staying in balance as partners, as teammates, to be practicing respect and equality between you, to make sure that you regard each other as having equal voices, and both of those voices need to contribute to the overall health of the relationship.
Beautiful.
That's lovely. And that has definitely raised the bar for other people to bring props in.
Yeah, everyone needs to
every
bring
other
props
guest
now.
has been upstaged by Susanne. Lovely. So as Nava said, Susanne, thank you genuinely so much. This has been such a fruitful discussion, and I'm sure there's so much that we've discussed and that you've been able to raise that is going to be so resonant for so many people. And there's so many practical examples that I think we obviously scratched the surface for in terms of today's episode, but obviously going through and being able to read the book in more depth is something that I'm sure will benefit many people to come. So thank you so much for coming onto the podcast.
Thank you, Susanne.
You're welcome. And if anyone needs to buy the book, if anyone wants to buy the book, if anyone would please have the book so that it benefits your relationship, you can find it on marriagetransformation.com or any online bookstore that's your favorite.
Perfect. Amazing. And we'll link the book below in the caption as well for everyone to see.
So thank you so much, Susanne. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you.
It's been a joy. I really appreciate that you invited me on. Thank you so much.
What a fruitful discussion that was.
Such a fruitful discussion. So many useful, practical tips.
And I think there's obviously more to discuss as well. So if you want to hear more from Susanne, maybe we could even set up one in the future. So let us know.
Let us know in the comments.
But as always, now you can find us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify at That Married Couple Podcast.
Yes. Thank you so much for listening. And as we said, we want to hear from you no matter what stage of life you're in.
Yes, as Nava said in the beginning, this podcast can't exist without you. So please, please, please send in any questions, any tips, any experiences, anything you want us to talk about on the podcast.
And if you haven't already yet, please leave us a 5-star review on Spotify, like this video, comment, and remember your new homework.
Smash that notification bell.
Amazing. Thank you so much for listening. Lots of love from Nava
And Kian. See you next time.